Our culture puts a huge emphasis upon same age peers, and those same age peers being the most important people in a tween or teen or young adult's life. I don't embrace that at all. James and I don't lean into that. That wasn't a part of our parenting.
Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course, because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening.
Before we get into the deep weeds with this topic, which I'm really looking forward to this, I have spoken maybe here or there about different parts of this question, and I know that I've spoken to it with homeschool mom friends. And today I think I'm just going to, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it all together just in this episode. It's something that I've not touched on. But before we get into that, I've got something for you. Now, when we are here on the podcast, it is you listening to me speak. And I would love to be able to hear your words, to get feedback from you. What do you enjoy about the podcast? How can I serve you? What are some topics that you want me to talk more about? Just all of that kind of stuff. And you're like, how can I let you know? I've got a very easy way. And then I've got a way to say thank you for doing that. So I have a survey that you can very easily go to. It'll only take you about 2 to 3 minutes of your time. I suggest doing it here very soon. Maybe pausing this episode and going and doing it, or at the very least doing it after this episode so that you do not forget. But it's just a way for me to collect a little bit of information about you on a completely anonymous level so that I can continue to pour into the podcast and different resources so that I can come alongside and help you. So you can find that survey at bit.ly, which is spelled bit.ly/ and write this down maybe, LBYL, so L by L survey. So that's all lowercase. So basically it stands for Little by Little Survey, but you're just going to put bit.ly, bit.ly/LBYL survey. And that'll just bring you right to it. You can do it on your phone, which you're probably listening to me right now on your phone, so it's super easy. And as a way of saying thank you, all of those survey results that I get, if you do this before Sunday, February 9th, I'm going to put you into a drawing, and I'm going to randomly select 3 of you to send a Homeschool Mom book to you. Now, guess what? The best part of this? You get to choose which book it is. So here's the deal. You can choose from any of the guests that I have had here on the podcast in the past couple of years. Any book that they have written that you can find on Amazon, you can pick one of those books. So let me go over some of the different authors that I've had here so it gives you a little bit of an idea. Are you ready? So I've had Leah Bowden, Dorinda Wilson, Connor Boyack, Albie Halberstadt, September McCarthy, Leslie Martino, Ginny Urich, Jamie Erickson. Those are just some of them. So if I pull your name, if you are one of the 3 lucky winners, I will send you an email and then give you a list and tell you to pick out which book you would like me to send. And guess what? It'll come straight to your mailbox. So don't forget to go ahead and go over to that survey. The link is also going to be in the show notes. Now today, let's talk about right now this question of, will my homeschooler grow up and resent me, meaning you also, the parent, for missing out on those traditional school memories? Now, we're going to get into some of the specifics of what those are in just a moment, but let me share with you a little bit of a story that recently happened with me. I don't know how we got onto the topic. Actually, you know what? I do know. We were going through a book, myself and my now 17-year-old. We were going through a book, and in it was talking about, the author was talking about her mother's class ring. And he goes, "What's a class ring?" So I had to tell him about it, and then I searched in my jewelry box. I couldn't find mine. And then I realized, I think at some point, it's going to sound a little bit crazy, but at some point we were we'll just say we were broke. We were pretty broke. And what I did was I went to this party and I have no idea. I don't know how I got invited. I don't know. But basically, what they would do is they would purchase the gold from rings. And so I had a couple of rings, brought them. They took out the jewels from it and would give you then the jewels. And then they would go ahead and take the gold from the ring and melt it down and sell it. But they would give you some money. And we needed money. And I hadn't worn that ring in so long. And you know what? It's been how many years? And I didn't even know that I didn't have it anymore. But I did find the little jewel that was in it. So I had to go on and explain to him what a class ring was. And then it reminded me what a big deal a class ring was for me. Now, this would have been, I graduated from high school in 1994. And some of you are like, oh my goodness, she's so old. Yes, I said something about my birthday a couple weeks ago. I recently turned 49. So you're like, oh, some of you might have been born in 94. I don't know. But it was just so important to have this class ring. So I would have gotten it in my junior year. So I guess maybe in 1993, and everybody was getting them. And I was like, I just have to have this. And it was just one of those traditional school memories that really stuck out to me. And my son was like, oh, well, what was on it? And I'm kind of telling him about it. And he's like, that's weird. Like, how long were you going to wear it? And I was like, I don't know. I think I wore it for a couple years. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm in college. Who cares about high school anymore? But I know going back, my parents would have their class rings. It was such a big deal. And I highly doubt that this is even a thing right now because I don't think I've heard about this in a very long time. So it just kind of shows you that some things are important in some time periods and sometimes things are not important in others. But let's get into the nitty-gritty right now. Now, when I say traditional school memories, these are some of the ones that I'm referring to. Prom, that's a really big one. And how about homecoming now? I feel like that has become a big thing in the past couple of years. I see pictures on Facebook of friends whose kids are in school. But what about sports? What about just regular holiday and end of the year school parties? What about giving out Valentine's Day cards and the fun of that? What about school assemblies? And what about a graduation ceremony? Or what about participating in school plays and different productions? And what about things just simple like recess? Now, in that list, and there's more too to the list too, but I feel like I caught like quite a bit of the big ones. Some of these are bigger than others, like I happened to mention prom and homecoming, and all of them probably strike some kind of chord. You probably have a memory from all of them at some point. Now, again, some of them are bigger and some of them are the reason why some parents decide to keep kids in school or to allow them to go back to school so that their children can participate in these. Now, I've got a couple of things I want to add, and I'm going to give you some ideas if this is something that you are trying to navigate right now or you feel like you're going to navigate in the years to come. First is remember that every child is different. For some kids, these things are going to be important, and some kids, it's not going to be important. Some kids are going to want to be a part of things, and some kids are not. And that can be the different children within your family. You could have some that, yes, would be interested in going, and some that vehemently are like, no, I have absolutely no desire to be a part of that. And it could be from possibly kids who have already attended public school or who have a lot of friends that are in public school versus homeschool kids who have never attended public school or don't have friends that are in public school. So it could go along with that. It could go along with personality, but really look at each child individually. Secondly, your family culture is going to set the tone for what's important in your family. But however, we have to balance that number one thing I mentioned in that every child will be different. So when I say family culture, what am I talking about? I did do an episode all about family culture. I will link that in the show notes for you so you can go ahead and listen to that one so you fully understand what does that exactly mean. But your family culture is going to set the tone. It's going to show what the priorities are for your family. Is it a priority to participate in the prom? Or is it a priority to participate in school sports because you're looking to get a scholarship for going to a college because of that sport? Or just being in sports is important to you? Or participating in parties or homecoming or play, chorus, band productions? Is that important for your family or not? And that is where your family culture will decide what exactly is important. And you as the parents get to set the tone for that. However, with that caveat that kids kind of have their own ideas, especially as they get to be tweens and teens, right? Now, the answer to the question of this podcast episode of, is your child going to resent you someday when they're older and say, I never got to go to prom, I never got to go to homecoming, I didn't get to participate in plays, and I really hope and pray that that's not what happens. My hope is that you lean into who your kids are, you lean into your family culture and what's important to you, the values that are important to you, and how you spend your time, and that as they get older, even if they say, it would have been nice to go to a prom, they say, you know what, mom and dad had their reasons, and you've explained those reasons, and they respect that for you. And guess what? As they have kids, they can do what they want to with their kids then. They can decide that, yes, I think it'd be important for my kids to go to the prom, or they could get older and mature and see your point of view and say, I thought it was important when I was 16, but now that I am 30, 35, and my kids are about that age, I'm like, well, maybe older than that, 35, 40, and saying, that's not really that important to me anymore. And so just understanding that their perspective is going to change as well. But it really also depends upon friends. I have some friends that are homeschool families where some of this stuff is really important to them. And then I have some other friends that none of this is important to them, or they have found alternative ways of meeting that desire that their child has. Overall, kids are going to follow your lead. And when you have a good relationship with them as they grow and mature, even if things are a little bit strained and tumultuous in the teen years, as they grow and mature, hopefully they get to that point where they understand and respect your decisions. And they say, okay, maybe I would have chosen something different, but I understand where my parents are coming from. They love me, they had their reasons, and they've explained the reasons. When we just blanket statements say to a child, no, you cannot do that. Well, some of those kids, they're going to be a little bit like I was. And I was like, oh, I can't do that? Okay, watch me go and do that. And there's going to be some kids that are going to be super compliant. And then there's some that are going to be somewhere in the middle of that. But when we don't give them reasons for why we don't want them to participate in something or why our family doesn't do something, they don't understand. They're confused. And they see you just as a dictator. So if things become important to them, such as going to the prom or homecoming or whatever it is, and it is something that you and your husband, you have decided that that is not something that you want to allow your kids to do, then sit down and have conversations with them. And this is easier to do beforehand. If you have, say, a 10-year-old, it is easier to start planting those seeds and letting them know what your expectations are. It doesn't mean you don't change. It doesn't mean that you don't change your mind because you've been presented with a different argument or seeing things from a different point of view, but letting them know beforehand. So such things, this is a completely different topic, but such things such as dating. I mean, I knew growing up, I wasn't allowed to date until I was 16. That was something that we talked about. Now, I changed the rules for my kids, and we have decided, and we can talk about this. Now, in that survey, if you want to hear more about this, let me know in that survey. But we decided for our children that we didn't see the benefits of them dating until after they were done with their homeschool education. And we let them know that beforehand. That was very clear. And it was very clear why. And when they were younger and say 10, they didn't really understand those reasons why. And we told them in an age-appropriate manner. And as they've gotten older, we've added to that. So I hope that you do the same thing when it comes to this. So don't not have these conversations with your child if they're 5 or 10. Don't wait until they're 17 and they're begging to go to the prom because all the kids that they work with are going to the prom. Have the conversations beforehand. And if you didn't, and they're 17 begging to go to the prom, then have that conversation and decide what you're going to do. And be a united front, yourself and your husband. But you overall get to set the tone and take the lead on this. But friends are greatly going to influence them as well. Our culture puts a huge emphasis upon same age peers, and those same age peers being the most important people in a tween or teen or young adult's life. I don't embrace that at all. James and I don't lean into that. That wasn't a part of our parenting. And our kids have seen the blessing and the benefit of having friends of all different ages. They actually really appreciate those that are in a season or two or a couple of seasons ahead of them, other adults who will speak into them, and they enjoy the wisdom and the experience that those people have because that's what they have been exposed to. When teens, their main influence is other teens, the maturity is going to be at the same level. There isn't going to be the wisdom. And so therefore, they're going to want to do things. They're going to want to do things that everybody else is doing, right? Well, so-and-so gets to do this. I remember saying, well, everybody gets to go to this Valentine's Day dance. I think I was maybe in 8th grade or something, was dying to go to this dance. And the funny thing is my parents made me write a paper as to why I should get to go to the dance. And I did end up getting to go to the dance. It was rough being the oldest. Let me just tell you that. But just knowing that friends will influence and you get to guide who those friends are. And sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, especially if you have removed your kids from the school system in their tween or teen years. They really do have that attachment to other children, other teens and stuff. So just knowing that our culture has this huge emphasis upon that, but when you homeschool, you don't have to. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here again of these specific areas, because you might be like, well, how can I do feel like my child might want to do some of these things, or just to tuck this in the back of your mind so that you can then use it later on. So you also have to take into consideration your homeschool regulations. You may live in a state where your child can participate in sports through the school system and you allow them to do so. You might live in a state that you are not allowed to do that. That's where I live. Kids are not allowed to participate in anything that has to do with the school system. Some state regulations allow you to, and some do not. And some, they leave it up to the school system. So you really have to know what your homeschool regulations are when you want to decide that. But there's a lot of leagues that are outside of the school system. Yes, oftentimes most of the kids in those leagues are going to be from school. So you get to decide, do you want them to take part in that? What are the actual goals? What experience are they going to have? Now, when it comes to things like proms and homecoming dances, and I mean, like a homecoming football game, anybody can go into the football game, right? You don't have to necessarily be a part of the school. You can go into that. But when it comes to like these bigger getting dressed up and that kind of stuff, then you get to decide maybe, because the school might allow them to go with somebody else, whether this is just a friend that is taking them that they're going with, or whomever, that they can bring a, in air quotes, date with them and go to this anyway. There's also homeschool things. Now, I don't know if there's homeschool homecoming games necessarily. Maybe you might live in an area that does that, but there's definitely homeschool proms. Is it going to be a little different than the public school? Sure. It's probably a little bit more low-key. Probably the cost is less and maybe not as much riffraff that's going on. But there are opportunities. If this is something that's really important to you and you don't see any of those opportunities, but you know that maybe it's going to be important for other teens in the area, then get together with some other moms and organize it yourself. Maybe it's not a prom, but maybe it's a getting dressed up and going to a fancy place for dinner. And I don't know, you can add it. Maybe they go to a show, like a play or something afterwards, but you can create your own experience where they can make some memories if they want to do that with friends. How about such things as like Valentine's Day cards? Because we are coming up on Valentine's Day. You can do that with homeschool groups. You could do it with maybe their church Sunday school or neighborhoods. You can do it with maybe your co-op. If you feel like this is something that you want your child to have a memory of doing, then go ahead and participate or create this opportunity. How about things like plays and productions? Again, some schools may allow you to participate in those, and some schools may not. And you might have to look outside of the school system and find something else. You might have a child that this is really what they're passionate about, and it'll be completely worth the effort of finding something and the investment of the time and the money and the energy that goes into it. Let's end here with talking specifically about a graduation ceremony. I did do an episode, it was a couple of years ago, I guess, when I talked about what we do for our graduation ceremony. We have opted not to participate in anything big or anything that mirrors what the school system is doing, but I do know that my state there is an organization that puts on an actual graduation, and it's homeschoolers from all over the state. I just knew that my kids wouldn't really care. So we just did our own type of ceremony and our own graduation party just in our backyard. So I will drop the link for that in the show notes. It's worked really well for my family, but just know that there are options. If there are not options for homeschoolers, then maybe create your own option or just be like, you know what? It's okay. We don't all get to do everything. Think about even when you were in school. Not everybody went to the prom. Not everybody went to homecoming because they weren't interested in it. And even that goes the same for now today. Not everybody does this. So there are alternatives. There are other options for all of these things, or you can create them. But just know, when you have that relationship with your child, I highly doubt that they're going to resent you someday. They might resent you if you say no in a legalistic type of way, you cannot go, and then you continue to talk about how you went to the prom and you share pictures and talk about all your experiences that you had with all these things, but then don't allow them to participate, then yes, they might be a bit resentful because you're creating a desire for something that you're not allowing them to then have. So I hope that this has kind of answered some of the questions. And let me just say that with all three of my kids, none of them have said anything when actually they've said the opposite. I do have one. My youngest probably would if there is actually a homeschool prom. And I've kind of mentioned he's thought a little bit about it. He would probably be the one that would be gung-ho and want to go and participate in all these different things. My older son, absolutely not. He didn't want to participate. He didn't want to be a part of any of that kind of stuff. I sent him into the school to do the PSAT, and he was like, that was like one day, and he was like, I'm done. I don't want to be in. I'm out. Peace out. And my daughter we did do some things. We had found different places. She wanted to be in plays for a while and do some productions. We did that. And so we have found different ways to be able to meet those needs. But overall, my kids don't resent me because guess what? We had other memories. We did other things that they would not have had the opportunity to do if they were in school. Before I close out, again, I'd love to get your feedback, hear from you. That survey is, if you're listening to this past February 9th, that survey is still open and your input is just invaluable. I would still love to hear it. But if you would like to be entered for the drawing to win one of those 3 books that you get to choose which one the book is, then you need to fill out that survey before Sunday, February 9th, 2025. Again, the link is going to be in the show notes, but you can go to spelled bit.ly/ and this is all lowercase, everything, LBYLSURVEY. So bit.ly/L survey. I cannot wait to hear from you, and I just really appreciate your input so that we can continue with the podcast and we can have this conversation a little bit more than just me speaking to you. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode and it's given you lots to think about.
Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.